Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship here with another Velocity Banking review. And before we get started, let's go ahead and stare at my paid off mortgage in 2 years and 9 months. Yes, I paid it off in 2 years and 9 months. Now, why am I mentioning it now? Is because I think you have to use the first 5 to 10 seconds to grab the hook for new viewers. Because for the old viewers, I said it 10,000 times. I think. But let's go ahead and get started. So, what's velocity banking? It's a debt payoff strategy where you throw all of your money into debt with the help of something called a line of credit. And the first step is creating a budget. So, this is our income, expenses, leftover savings. And then we create an expense breakdown of every single debt that we have, right? So, it's important to list all of your debts, and then here we have our general non-debt expenses, okay? Non-debt expenses. So what we do with velocity banking is we create the same income, or basically almost create the same budget, income, expenses, and then what we do is we redirect the flow of money. So the first mental hurdle that we have when it comes to velocity banking is that we're not going to save money. So this is very scary because most people say if you ask the average person, what's better, saving $720 a month or saving nothing? And they'll say saving $720 is better even though you have debt that's at a higher interest rate than the amount that you're saving, right? And so what we're going to do is increase something called our cash flow. And we're also going to use something called our line of credit as our main operating account. So line of credit. Okay. And so what's a line of credit? Well, basically it's a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay back, and then use it over and over again. So this is my home equity line of credit for $373,500. I go to a bank's website, I click a button, and then it'll dump up to that limit into my checking account, right? And so this is kind of one of the banks that I use, right? So basically the way that it work in real life is I just say, "Hey, move money to line of credit to checking account." Click, and then bam, I have money in my checking account, okay? And so what we're going to assume is we have a free and clear line of credit. And a line of credit is also a credit card is also a line of credit. So again, it's anything where you can reuse the money over and over again after you've paid it back, right? And so, if you don't know about me, just have to mention this over and over again because you might be new to the channel. And according to YouTube, I think a certain percentage of you are new to the channel. Actually, let me look it up right now. Give me one moment. Yeah, I just got into the YouTube studio, and according to the YouTube studio, 54% of my total viewership are new viewers. That's why I always have to say I paid off my mortgage in 2 years and 9 months. Because if you're new, I wanna grab you with that hook. Doesn't mean that you're gonna do it. Alright, so let's go ahead and, take a look at this. I have over $739,000 in lines of credit, credit cards, personal lines, business. I don't have a business line of a quote, official business line of credit, although I do have business credit cards. And then, I have this home equity line of credit. And so you might be wondering, you know, is it easy to get $739,000 in lines of credit and be the top 0.01%? The fact that I am the top 0.01%, according to ChatGPT, probably means not, because if it were easy, then ChatGPT would say like top 50%. But I think the reason it's not easy is because people don't have the right mindset, right? And what is the secret to understanding the mindset to getting credit? Well, you got to understand what the banks want, right? And here's the secret: banks don't lend money to people who need it. Okay. They don't lend money to people who need it. So if you're a person who needs money and you go to a bank, you know what the bank is thinking? Oh, this person's not going to pay me back, because they know what happened to you when you lent money to a friend or a family member who needed it. They didn't pay you back. Okay. So that's why banks don't lend money to people who need it. So if you want to get a lot of credit, and actually getting a lot of credit is a symbol of good financial health, because the bank doesn't like people who need money. So what I did is I always just went to a bank when I didn't need money. Eventually, I got $739,000 in lines of credit. Okay, so here we're going to assume that we have a free and clear $100,000 8% line of credit. Now, would the bank lend it to us when we only have $700 left over? Probably not. They might, because at least it's not like $1, right? Because we've done many situations where we have $1 left over. But what we're gonna do is move up some debts into the, line of credit and then, increase our cash flow and then just make our line of credit as our main operating account. It's relatively simple, right? So, basically, what we're gonna do is we're gonna calculate something called a cash flow index, which is like a ranking system of what debts we move to the line of credit. So what we do is we take the balance of the debt divided by the payment. So 5,000 divided by 175. Whoopsie, I forgot the division symbol. And then this one is 8,000 divided by 260. And then this one is 15,000 divided by 487.5. And then this one is 27,000 divided by 855. And then this one is 20,000 divided by 363.83. And then this one is 270,000 divided by 1138.33. And then we see here that we have essentially a ranking system, right? So the lower the number, that's the one you want to pay off. What does this high number mean? Well, the high number means essentially that if you do pay it off, you're not going to get a lot of bang for your buck. Like in order to pay off this mortgage, I have to pay $270,000 to only get $1,100 back in my mortgage. Whereas I could combine these two credit cards, pay them off, and get even more than that. And so, what, 42,000, I think. So what we're gonna do is take these low numbers and then move them into line of credit. So how much is that? 5, 8, 15, 27, and then sum them up, 55,000. Excuse me, I got an alarm going off. One moment. All right, sorry, I'm back. All right, 55,000. So what we're gonna do is move that 55,000 into our 8%, $100,000, we'll say home equity line of credit. And then guess what happens here? This is like where the magic happens. Credit card 00000, and then now we're not saving money anymore, but we're putting all of our money into debt. And then now our cash flow is $2,497.83, right? And so now what we're gonna do is the final step, which is put our entire paycheck into the line, take our expenses out, and then rinse and repeat over and over again, thereby making our line of credit as our main operating account, right? So the real main difference between the average American banking style and a velocity banking is how you treat your checking or savings, right? So in traditional banking, the savings account or the checking account is, quote, the final destination of your money, whereas in velocity banking, it's treated as the middleman. So if you take a look here, money comes in, and then as soon as it comes in, it just goes right out into the line of credit, right? So it's not a place where I want to store my money, because then if you store your money in your checking account, you don't gain any money. You have very little interest gained from that account. And then usually you have loans that range from 8 to 10 to 30% if it's a credit card. So if you have money that's 0% in a checking account and then like 8 to 30% from debt, then the bank is winning. So what we're trying to do is dump all of our money into the debt, aka the line of credit, and then do it in a way that makes it easy to pay off the debt, right? So paycheck in, expenses out, and then I'll just go ahead and calculate this. All right, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do this minus 2497.83, and then what we're gonna do is take the average daily balance, multiply it by the interest rate, and then divide by 12, and then we're gonna go ahead and copy and paste. Copy and paste. And then you see right here that it got paid off in 24 months. So 24 months, we paid off 55K, right? And now we're gonna go ahead and copy and paste. And then now we're gonna do this with the auto loan in 24 months, right? What are the current balances of the loans? And we have this loan calculator right here to help us figure that out. So this is 12 grand, okay? And so I'm gonna go ahead and move this right here, right? So it's gonna be plus 12416.69. And then this is gonna be 0, right? And then so now we see that our cash flow just increases. We just pay off the debt, and it's relatively simple. And yada, 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 like in the show Seinfeld. All right, 2861.67. And then there we go. And then we see that here we go. In 29 months, it gets paid off. All right. And so 29 months, and then that'll be 75K. And then now the last one is the mortgage. So in 29 months, what's the current balance of the mortgage? It's 256,000. Now, this is a relatively high cash flow index, relatively low interest rate. So we have two choices here, right? We can just pay off the mortgage, or we can invest in any income generating asset, be real estate or whatever. And so, if you want to invest, you can certainly do that and use debt to help you do that. Okay. Now, for this example, I'm going to switch it up a little bit because in the past examples, I've just been doing what's it called? Paying off the personal mortgage. But we can go ahead and set up, I don't know, like an Airbnb that makes like $5,400 a month. I remember when I first set this up, I was like, I am such a moron for doing this because I've been watching like 10 to 15 videos on the Airbnb crash. But you know what? I liked my 2-acre farm so much, I was like, experience the rural bliss of modern comfort or something like that. And I should show some pictures. I have actually showed some pictures of the property um in like the members only live stream, but and I really like it. In fact, I like it more than my own personal home. So you do an Airbnb, you can do a rental, like a what's it called? A regular rental. So the thing you have to be careful about long-term rentals is that it's very hard to cash flow with them, right? So a lot of people when they first got into real estate, they listen to like Rich Dad Poor Dad and they're like, "Oh, I can borrow all the money that I want and then I'm going to cash flow." And then people who listen to that realize that wait a minute, after all expenses paid, insurance, taxes, like there's very little cash flow, right? So it just depends on you what you want to do. If it were up to me, when I first got into rental real estate, I probably would just set up like two or three Airbnbs, and then you have like maybe about 10 to 15 grand of revenue a month. I don't know. That's just what I think. But the fact that I got 5 grand in revenue, um, in a no name area, I think is pretty amazing. So, okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do this and auto loan, mortgage, and what else do I do? All right, let's go ahead and invest in real estate, rental real estate. And so here's the number one rule when it comes to rental real estate. You got to buy it at a discount, right? So if it's a $300,000 property, you got to buy it for 200,000. If it's a $200,000 property, you got to buy it for 100,000. If it's a $100,000 property, you got to buy it for 10 grand. Okay. You got to buy it for 10 grand. So you got to be careful that about like low real estate prices because people think, oh, if it's cheaper, it's better. No, you have to buy it cheaper to whatever the relative value is. So, for example, some people might say, well, $700,000 is a lot for a property, right? Well, if you tell me if it's in San Francisco, I'm gonna find a way to get the money. Okay, like especially when the area sells for like 2 to 3 million for a single family home. But yes, I will. I I will get it at a discount. That's kind of like your mindset when it comes to real estate. So let's go ahead and buy not only the property, but let's say we're so good at negotiating, we go in all in for $200,000, including the repairs. Okay, because when you buy distressed assets, usually and not always, usually there's some sort of repair involved in it, and so you might have to wait 3 to 5 months in order to be fully functional or fully ready for a tenant. But we'll just say investment mortgage, right? And so we'll just say 200K, 200K. And usually the anything commercial or investment, and I spelled mortgage wrong. Um, Investment commercial will have higher interest rates, although I think personal home interest rates are comparable, right? I don't know what the interest rates are, and frankly, I don't even care. Most people are like, well, I'm waiting till interest rates go down. And I guess if that happens, I'll just spike demand and then the price will go up, right? But usually I'm more agnostic towards interest rates. And what the thing you really have to care about is the purchase price, right? You have to look at the area, see if it's a decent area, see if what it the the houses in the area are selling for, and then get it at a price that's lower than that, and then put some repairs in if there is some structural repairs. So what we're gonna do is now go ahead and get the investment mortgage all in, mhm, for um, we'll say, yeah, 200,000 at 8%. Okay, not 83. Uh oh. So let's go ahead and do that. 200,000 at 8% and 30 years. And let's go ahead and do this. So now we have another payment of 14 grand, right? So we have that payment. And then look, we can actually do this too. So if we wanted to get a new line of credit, we could do that, or we could just get a loan. But either way, uh, I probably would still get the loan just because if you use up the whole line of credit to purchase a home, then you don't have really extra reserves. But if you get a mortgage and line of credit, oh, beautiful, right? Because you have all these reserves just in case something happens, and you can always chunk the mortgage, which just means you take a piece of the loan and move it to the line of credit. But let's go ahead and do this. And we could actually just simulate this just by moving the whole thing into the line of credit, even though it's not technically accurate. And then what we do, right? So this is going to be 0 if we do it like this. We see that this is what our cash flow is, but we haven't included the Airbnb income. So obviously, if you make 5,000 in Airbnb income, that's not your net operating income. It's not your net income because you have to account for expenses. And I don't know, um, what would the expenses be? I think it just depends. Obviously, there's the setup. When you do set up the Airbnb, probably in terms of furniture and furnishings, probably 20 to 30 grand. Now, if you're using a consultant, that might cost you money too. And then if you have to repair it, that's actually going to cost you. You know what? Let me revise this. So let's say that we go all in for 260. Okay. So this includes contractor, the contractor, the furnishing, the maybe you hired an interior designer. So 260 all in, 260,000. And let's see what happens here. So 260,000. Okay. 260. So now the payment would be around this, right? So what we're going to do, okay? We're just going to pretend that we bought it with the line of credit for now, just because it makes the math easier. Although I wouldn't really do this in real life. I'd do chunking. So now what we have to do is add the Airbnb income, right? So the Airbnb income, if we're making about 5,000 a month, which is insane, we'll just assume maybe 40% is, I don't know if this is reasonable or not. Okay. I heard in like commercial multifamily, you assume that 50% of your income goes to expenses. But because I haven't been in business for a year or even several years, you can't really predict, or at least for me, it's been kind of hard to predict what the monthly what's it called, expenses are, just because you have tenant people coming in, and if it depends if you want to use a cleaner or not. Although I highly recommend using a cleaner, but let's just say 40% goes to expenses, which means 60% of the income you keep, right? So you see that this is now cash flow, $5,861.67. And then what we do is you just place this right here. So 5861.67. And then let's see how long it takes for us to pay off that Airbnb, right? Now, again, I would not recommend you assume pie in the sky numbers, because I had no idea when I did this that I was going to make around 4 to 5 grand a month. In fact, when I first started this, I was like hoping and prayed that like I would get 2 grand a month. And the only reason I wanted to make it an Airbnb is because I wanted to selfishly use the property for my own purposes, because it's a 2 acre farm, right? So, might as well make it the dream property and make some money. And because I went to like AirDNA, and if you don't know where AirDNA is, it's like a data aggregator website that shows you all like the rates that short term rentals around your area are charging. And so it actually said when I went to AirDNA, I would make less money as a short-term rental than I would as a long-term rental. So I was kind of, you know, going in a little bit blind. And I was like, "Oh man, I hope I'm not making a terrible decision." But anyways, all right, so 53 months, 53 months, we paid off the mortgage. So let's go ahead and do this. So this would be 29 plus 59. So that's 88 months. We're mortgage free, so that's 200. So 275 plus no 75. 75 plus 260. So that's 335K. And then this is going to be 88 divided by 12. Oh, 7.33 years. Nice. We paid off one house and all of our debt in about 7 years. Now at this point, you got to ask, like, all right, am I fine with the way that things are? Do I want more investment income? Because we get all the cash flow from the first property, right? And not only that, we get the equity. So assuming that this is around a at least a $300,000 house, right? We're getting about $5,000 of revenue. Multiply that, we'll say about 60, and that will be our quote cash flow from the Airbnb, okay? And so we do that, and then we just rinse and repeat over and over again, right? So 7 years, we paid off all of our debt, including the investment mortgage, and hopefully we could get it a lot cheaper, right? I mean, 260,000, that's still pretty good. Still pretty good. Especially if you follow the 1% rule, where if you could get 1% of the purchase price, 260,000, then in rent, then that's considered a quote a good deal, and we're making $5,000 in revenue, right? 4 to 5,000. Okay, so all right, let's just get one more Airbnb. Let's just do it one more time. And so the way that we do it one more time is essentially we just multiply this by 2, right? Because now we have 2 Airbnbs that we assume we got around the same price, 260,000. Okay, and then now our cash flow is about 8,000. I can't even say. I just believe I'm saying this. 8861.67, right? And then we're gonna copy and paste, and see how long it takes for us to get the this one. So it's 33 months. We paid off the second Airbnb. So let me just do this. I'm gonna copy and paste this one. All right. So now 88 plus 33, so that's 121 months. And then how much debt is that? So it equals 335 plus 260, that's 595. Okay, and then now we could just go ahead and pay off our own personal mortgage, right? So now let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to use something called chunking. So at 121 months, we got to figure out the balance of the personal mortgages, and we see it's 204,000. So let's go ahead and fill in the numbers in our Velocity Banking Calculator. Okay. All right. So now let's do this. We'll do this, and all right. So 270,000 at 3%, and what's the current balance? It's 204,628.29. 204,628.29. And then, yeah, and what's the income and the expenses? So income is 12 grand. Is it 12? 12000, and then the expenses are $2,000, because that's we sum up all the expenses except for the loan we're trying to pay off, and then we'll just do chunk 12 grand into the line of credit, and then we see it, bam, paid off a mortgage in 1.8 years, right? So now what we do is put a 0 here, and then we have 121 plus 1.8 times 12. Wait, 1.8 times 12. Yeah, is that it? Yeah, so 143 months, through 43 months. And so now it's 595 plus 270, and so that's 865K of debt paid off, right? And so 143 divided by 12. So that's about almost 12 years. So yeah, 12, I would say about 12 years or under 12 years, a little bit under 12 years to pay off that debt. And so that's where we are, right? So see how easy that was? I mean, a lot of times people stress themselves out with real estate because they're trying to buy like 20 properties at once. And then I've been watching recent videos about people who bought multifamily for the cash flow and turns out it doesn't cash flow, right? That's because they broke the sacred rule of real estate investing, which is paying too much. Can't do that. And then if you take on debt, you got to pay off that debt as quickly as possible, which we're doing here for today. And we have three paid off houses under 12 years, right? Three paid off houses. Beautiful. Okay. All right. So, well, that's it for today, folks. Korean Lanta Mentorship. Have a great day, and I'll see you all on the next video.